Welcome to the channel of Unseen Mysteries, where we delve into the stories that people usually only dare to whisper in the dark, stories that even the light of day cannot dispel the fear hidden in their minds. Today, I want to take you into a world that very few people dare to talk about. A world without the bright light of the sun, without green fields or roads stretching under the warm sunlight. No, this is a different world, a cold, wet, and dark world where small but powerful creatures reign, creatures that we call dwarves. But please do not misunderstand, I am not talking about the cute, adorable dwarves in the fairy tales you heard as a child. The characters with red, pointy hats, long white beards, and cheerful laughter echoing in the forest. No, no, no. What we are about to explore today is completely different, completely foreign, and one might say, completely terrifying. These are dark legends, scary stories, tales that will keep you awake at night, stories about dwarves, mysterious entities, people who live in the cold underground, creatures carrying ancient curses, curses that humans have tried to bury for hundreds, thousands of years. Have you ever wondered why, in so many cultures around the world, from the gloomy, misty forests of Europe to the deep, dark mines of South America to the tiny villages perched on the cold mountains of East Asia, there are stories about such small but powerful creatures? Why do they always appear in dreams, in the stories of old people around the fire, in the whispers of children when they play near places where adults never dare to go? Is it all just a product of the rich human imagination? Or is there really something, a terrible truth, a dark secret, hiding somewhere under our feet in the deep caves where the sunlight never reaches? Imagine for a moment you are standing in the middle of a deserted field. It is pitch black. There is no sound, only the wind whistling through the tall grass. And then from somewhere, you hear a sound, a light, very light tapping, as if someone were hitting a rock with a small hammer. But the sound is not coming from above the ground, but from deep, deep below. What would you think? What would you do? Would you run away, or would you stand, listen, and wonder? What is down there? Today, for the next 90 minutes, we will uncover the darkest pages of history, the most terrifying stories related to dwarfs. We will start from ancient myths, where they were friends of the gods, talented blacksmiths who lived in blazing forges under the mountains. Then we will go through terrifying legends from all over the world, from the cold forests of Ireland, where they stole the souls of children, to the deep mines of Bolivia, where they ruled the darkness. And finally, we'll come to modern times, where these little figures are still seen, still heard, still make people tremble. Are you ready? I hope you are, because once we start this journey, there will be no turning back. Take a deep breath. Turn off the lights in the room if you want, and join me in the dark legends of dwarves right now. Let's start from where all these stories originated, from the old days when people lived in primitive stone houses, when they looked up at the starry sky and wondered about the gods, the mysterious creatures that ruled this world. In Norse mythology, one of the oldest and richest cultures we know of, the dwarves, also known as dwarves, were very special creatures, very different from any other species. They were not as tall as the great gods with golden hair and shining swords in their hands, nor were they as strong and fierce as the giants with huge bodies, their steps shaking the earth. No, the dwarfs are small, very small, perhaps only reaching the knee of an average adult. But don't let their size fool you, because in their small hands is a talent that no one, no god, no human can match. The ability to forge magical weapons, objects so precious that just seeing them will make your heart beat faster with wonder and desire. Did you know that in Norse mythology, the hammer Mjolnir, the legendary weapon of the thunder god Thor, the weapon that can smash mountains, summon lightning from the sky, was not created by the gods. No, it was forged by the hands of the dwarves in forges hidden deep under the cold mountains, where the fire burns red all day and night, where smoke and dust cling to their ashen skin, where their eyes glow like embers in the darkness. They are depicted with long, unkempt beards that cover their small faces, with hands calloused from constant work. They live underground in deep caves, places where humans never dare to set foot, where there is only darkness and the sound of hammers hitting metal echoes endlessly. But don't think that they are just skilled craftsmen, talented artisans living peacefully in their own world. No, the dwarves of Norse mythology have a dark side that few people notice. They are greedy, very greedy, to the point that if you touch their treasures, the piles of gold, the sparkling gems that they spent their lives mining, they will not forgive. They are vengeful, very vengeful, and they are ready to curse anyone who dares to take even a tiny piece of gold from their hands. One story tells of a god who tricked the dwarves into taking a precious item from their treasure, thinking he was clever enough to outwit them, but he was wrong, terribly wrong. The dwarves created a necklace of enchanting beauty, shining like the stars in the night sky, but it carried a terrible curse. When the god put the necklace around his neck, his whole family fell into tragedy. His children died one by one, his wife went mad with grief, and finally he himself could not escape his fate of destruction. That was how the dwarves took revenge, not with physical strength, but with subtlety, with curses that no one could break. Leave the cold Nordic lands and go to another land, the land of Celtic mythology, where dwarves have a completely different image, but no less scary, even more terrifying. In ancient Ireland, they were not called dwarves, but treasure guardians, small entities that lived in ancient mounds, places where people used to bury their dead, places that no one dared to approach after nightfall. The people here believed that if you accidentally dug into their dwellings, if you dared to invade their territory, disaster would strike, your livestock would die without reason, healthy cows would suddenly collapse in the fields, sheep would disappear in the night without a trace, your crops would wither, golden wheat fields would dry up, fruit trees would fall without anyone knowing why, and sometimes the most terrible thing happens. You yourself, your family, disappear without a trace, as if swallowed by darkness. But that's not all. What's even more terrifying, much more terrifying, are the stories of children being stolen. Imagine this scene, a small village in the middle of a deserted field. The night covers it like a black blanket, no moon, no stars. In an old wooden house, a child is sleeping soundly on a small bed, his regular breathing echoing in the quiet space. And then from somewhere, a small figure appears, very small, only as tall as a chair, quietly sneaking through the window, its eyes shining in the darkness. It stands there, looks at the child, then gently, very gently, picks the child up and carries him away, disappearing into the night. The next morning, when the parents woke up, they found that in their bed was not their child, but something strange, a changeling, a disguised creature, looking exactly like the child, but with the spirit of darkness. Its eyes were empty, its smile was crooked, and it never cried, never spoke. And what about the real child? No one knew where it went, but sometimes, very rarely, people heard faint cries, painful cries coming from underground, from deep cracks that no one dared to look down into. Gradually, over hundreds of years, over thousands of years, the image of the dwarves in the minds of people changed slowly but clearly. From friends of the gods, talented, blacksmiths with magical hands. They became symbols of fear, of darkness, of things that people could not control. Why was that? Perhaps because they live in the dark, in deep caves, in bottomless crevices, places where people always feel insecure, always feel afraid. The underground, with its winding tunnels, with its dark gaps that no one knows where they lead, has long been considered the gateway to the world of the dead, the world of lost souls. And the dwarves, with their small stature but strange strength, seem to be the guardians of that door, those who do not belong to the world of light, do not belong to the world of humans. They are no longer friendly blacksmiths, no longer companions in fairy tales. They have become mysterious entities, creatures carrying curses and revenge, whose names alone send a chill down one's spine. Are these stories just the imagination of the ancients, just stories told to scare children on cold winter nights? Or is there really some truth, a dark truth, a terrifying secret waiting for us to discover? Come with me to the next part, where the legends become colder, scarier, and much closer to us. Now, we will leave the ancient myths, the stories written on yellowed pages, carved on moss-covered rocks, and enter another world. A world of dark legends, stories told for hundreds, thousands of generations, from the gloomy, misty forests of Ireland to the deep, dark mines of South America, and even the tiny villages perched on the cold hills of Eastern Europe. These stories are not just entertainment, not just moral lessons passed down by the ancients. No, they are warnings, fearful whispers of small but powerful creatures, entities that just mention them and send a chill down the spine. Come with me on this journey, and I warn you, what you're about to hear will make you unable to look at darkness in the same way again. Come to Ireland first, a land famous for its lush green fields, steep cliffs by the sea, and ancient mounds scattered everywhere, mounds that are said to date back thousands of years to the time when people worshipped the gods of the deep forests and high mountains. Here, the people tell of a special kind of dwarf, a creature they call the Black Duende. Don't imagine them as fairy tale dwarfs with red hats and cheerful laughter, because the Black Duende are completely different, completely terrifying, completely unlike anything you've ever imagined. They are small, very small, only reaching up to the ankles of an adult, with skinny, bony bodies, skin as grey as ash, and deep black eyes like two bottomless pits in their distorted faces. They live in ancient mounds, places where the ancients used to bury their dead, places that no one dares to approach when the sun goes down below the horizon. The people here believe that if you hear a giggle in the night, a cold, creepy sound, as if someone is playing in the dark, it is a sign of the Black Duende. But the most terrifying thing, the thing that makes even the toughest men tremble, is their habit luring children away from their homes, carrying them off into the darkness, never to return. Imagine this scene: a small village in the middle of a deserted field, old wooden houses standing silently under a moonless sky, no light except the faint fire from the fireplace inside. In a small house, a child is sleeping soundly on a rough wooden bed, soft hair spread out on the pillow, steady breathing echoing in the quiet space. Suddenly, from somewhere, a sound rings out, a singing voice, very soft, very vague, like the sound of wind blowing through dry branches, but carrying to me a strange attraction, an attraction that no one can resist. The child opens his eyes still sleepy, but he does not cry, does not call for his mother. He sits up, gets out of bed, his bare feet touch the cold wooden floor, and then, as if controlled by something invisible, he opens the door, steps out, and walks straight into the dark forest beyond. In the darkness, a small figure stood waiting, its pitch-black eyes glowing like two flames, a twisted smile on its gaunt face. It reached out, took the child's hand, and the two disappeared into the night, leaving no trace but a giggle that echoed in the air. The next morning, when the parents discovered their child missing, they ran through the village, calling out their child's name in despair, but no one found anything. Only a few people who had stayed up late that night swore that they heard a faint cry coming from underground, from an ancient mound nearby, but no one dared to dig down to investigate. A true story from 1895 added to the horror of this legend. In County Kerry, a small village nestled in the middle of muddy fields, 5 children disappeared within a month, all on moonless nights. The villagers were frightened. They gathered together, took torches and hose to search, but found nothing but small footprints, very small, only half the size of a child's foot, imprinted in the damp soil. Those footprints led from the last house in the village to an ancient mound, a mound that had long been rumored to be the house of the Dwarves. A brave man, in despair over the loss of his son, took a pickaxe and dug into the mound, but when he had dug a few meters deep, a sound rang out. A laugh, not a human laugh, but the laugh of something not of this world. He ran away, his face as white as paper, and from then on, no one had dared to go near the mound again. The people believed that Black Duende was still there, hiding in the darkness, waiting for the next children. Leaving Ireland behind, we head to South America, a land of a different kind, where the deep mines hold not only riches, but also terrifying secrets. In Bolivia, the miners, who face darkness and death every day, believe in the existence of a dwarf entity called El Tío. El Tío is no ordinary dwarf, not a creature to be laughed at or looked down upon. They describe him as a small creature, barely knee-high, with skin as black as coal, eyes as red as the flames of a forge, and a sinister, twisted smile that reveals razor-sharp teeth. El Tío is said to be the lord of the underground, the ruler of everything that lies beneath the surface, from the glittering gold mines to the dark tunnels that lead to nowhere. The miners believe that if you pay respect to El Tío, if you leave gifts like spirits, cigarettes, or even the blood of a rooster, he will protect you, will lead you to the richest mineral veins. But if you offend him, if you forget to make offerings, or worse, if you greedily dig too deep into his territory, then disaster will strike and no one will be able to save you. A story from 1970 in Potosi, one of Bolivia's most famous mines, still makes people shudder when they talk about it. A group of 6 miners, all strong, experienced men, were working in a new tunnel, deeper than any they had ever dug before. As they rested and ate between shifts, one of them heard a strange sound, a tapping very light, as if someone was hitting the rock with a small hammer. He thought it was his colleagues, but when he looked around, no one was holding a hammer. The sound continued, getting louder and closer, as if something was approaching from deep in the darkness. The group began to feel uneasy, but they did not leave. They continued working, thinking it was just an echo in the tunnel. That night, when the shift ended, none of them returned to the surface. The family was worried, and a rescue team was sent down, but when they arrived, they found only the group's tools scattered on the cold ground, as if abandoned in a panic. There was no blood, no sign of a fight, but there was one thing that made everyone tremble. Small footprints, very small, only the size of a 3-year-old's, deeply imprinted in the ground, leading from where the group was working to a narrow crevice in the rock, a crevice that no adult could have passed through. One of the rescuers, in desperation, put his ear to the crevice and listened. He said he heard a scream, very faint, very far away, as if coming from some unreachable depth. From then on, no one dared to dig in that area again, and it was believed that LTO had dragged the group underground as a warning to anyone who dared to trespass. Finally, let's go to Eastern Europe, where the legend of the dwarf takes on a completely different, but no less scary, no less creepy nuance. Here, people talk about Domovoi, a kind of family guardian spirit, a small, hairy creature, usually living in the fireplace or a corner of the house, protecting the family from disasters, from evil spirits that roam at night. Domovoi is often depicted as a tiny old man with a long white beard that touches the ground, eyes that shine like lanterns, and a hoarse voice like the wind blowing through the chimney. People believe that if you treat Domovoi well, if you leave food like bread, milk, or a little honey on the table at night, it will protect you, will keep your house peaceful, will drive away evil spirits from the door. But if you offend it, if you forget to make offerings, if you dirty its habitat, or worse, if you accidentally spill its favorite food on the ground, then everything changes horribly. When insulted, Domovoi is no longer a guardian. It transforming into a ferocious dwarf with claws as sharp as knives, eyes glowing red with hatred, and a power that no one expected in such a small body. It is said that families who anger Domovoi will inevitably meet with disaster. Furniture will be destroyed, wooden chairs will shatter, porcelain bowls will fall to the floor without being touched, doors will slam shut in the middle of the night, livestock will die, healthy cows will roll over dead in the middle of the barn without a wound, horses will panic and run around until they collapse. And sometimes the most terrible thing happens. The owner of the house, the very people who live in that house, will be dragged under the floor to where Domovoi hides. A story from the 18th century, Russia, is still told as a warning. A drunken peasant accidentally spilled milk, a gift for Domovoi, on the dirty wooden floor. He laughed loudly, thinking it was all nonsense, that the stories about Domovoi were just old men's threats. But that night, the whole family heard a knocking sound, a slow, steady knocking sound, coming from under the floor as if someone were hammering on wood. The knocking went on for hours, getting louder and louder, closer and closer, until a laugh was heard. A creepy laugh, not human, but something else. The next morning, when the sun rose, the man had disappeared, and not a trace, only a small hole. In the wooden floor remained a small hole that no one could explain, as if he had been pulled down by a tiny but incredibly strong hand. These stories, though thousands of kilometers apart, though told by people who do not know each other, have one thing in common that makes us think. The connection between dwarves and darkness, between them and the underground, between them and what humans cannot understand, cannot control. Is this just the way the ancients explained things they did not understand? The strange phenomena they encountered in life? Or are there really such creatures, small but powerful entities, hiding in the darkness, waiting in silence, waiting for a chance to appear? Come with me to the next part, where we will explore modern mysteries, stories that even science, with all its advances, cannot explain. We have gone through the ancient stories, the myths carved in stone, written on time-worn parchment, and the dark legends told around the fire on cold winter nights. But now, let's forget those old days, because we are about to enter a world closer to home, a world in which you and I live, the modern world, a world of electric lights, of cars, of skyscrapers, and the most advanced technological devices. You might think that in such a world, the stories of dwarves, of little creatures lurking in the dark, are just faint memories. Stories that we tell our children to scare them into bed on time. But what if I told you that even in this age, even with machines, with science, with satellites flying in the sky, there are still reports, there are still stories, there are still evidences of dwarves, small, mysterious, and sometimes downright terrifying creatures. Come with me to these stories, and I warn you, what you're about to hear may make you look at your floor with a little doubt, a little fear. Let's start with England, a country of lush green fields, quaint villages nestled in the hills, and ancient stone circles that have stood silently for thousands of years. In 1960, in Derbyshire, a place famous for its picturesque landscapes and unsolved mysteries, a strange event occurred, an event that still makes people shudder when mentioned. One summer evening, as the sun was setting behind the hills, a group of children, about 5 or 6, were playing near an area known as the Great Stone Circle. It was a circle of giant stones erected in the ground thousands of years ago, a place that was said to have been a place of worship for ancient tribes. The children ran and laughed without a care in the world until darkness fell and something strange appeared. When they returned home, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear, they told a story that no one believed. They said that as the last light of day faded, they saw small, very small figures, barely reaching their knees, dancing around the rocks. The creatures wore tattered cloaks that fluttered in the wind, with their skinny arms waving as if performing some ancient ritual. Their eyes, oh, those eyes, glowed like lanterns in the darkness, not blue or brown like human eyes, but a cold, dull white, as if lifeless. The children stood there frozen, not daring to move, not daring to breathe, until one of them screamed, and the group ran back to the village. At first, the adults in the village just laughed, thinking that the children had imagined the story after hearing too many legends from their grandparents. But the next morning, a few curious people, including the father of one of the children, decided to go to the stone circle to investigate. When they arrived, in the light of day, they found something that made their blood run cold. Tiny footprints, tiny, half the size of a 5-year-old's foot, imprinted in the moist soil around the circle. The footprints were not animal, not human, but something else, something that no one could explain. They were scattered everywhere as if dozens of tiny creatures had been dancing there all night. And what was even more horrifying, near the largest stone in the circle, they found a hammer, a tiny hammer, only as long as a child's hand, made of polished black stone, polished to perfection, as if crafted by a skilled but not human hand. No one knew where the hammer came from, no one knew who left it there, but from that day on, the villagers began to avoid the stone circle at night. They said that if you stood nearby when the moon rose, you could hear giggling, small footsteps running across the stones, and sometimes singing. A strange, wordless song that came from underground. Leaving England behind, we come to Mexico, a country of endless cornfields, small villages nestled between rugged mountains, and a story from 2007 that made headlines around the world. Late one afternoon, in a remote rural area, a group of farmers were working in their fields when they noticed something strange moving in the tall grass. At first, they thought it was an animal, perhaps a rabbit or a small fox, but as they got closer, they realized it was not any animal they had ever seen. It was a small, very small creature, about the height of a baby, but it did not resemble a human at all. It had gray, dry skin like dead bark, abnormally large eyes that took up almost half its face, and short, crooked limbs like dry twigs. The creature struggled, making strange sounds, not a cry, not a roar, but something in between, which frightened the farmers. They quickly captured it, locked it in an old wooden cage, and filmed a video with an old phone belonging to one of the group. In the video, you can see the little creature struggling in the cage, its big black eyes staring straight into the camera as if it knew it was being filmed, as if it was sending a warning. The video quickly went viral online, being shared thousands of times, and soon it reached the local authorities. Officials quickly arrived on the scene, seized the creature, and declared that it was just a deformed monkey, perhaps due to illness or mutation, and that the video was a hoax created by the farmers to attract attention. But the story doesn't end there. It's not that simple. The farmers who captured the creature said that after they released it on police orders, strange things began to happen. The first night they heard a knock, a soft but steady knock, coming from the old wooden door of the house. They opened the door, but there was no one there, only darkness and the sound of the wind whistling through the fields. The second night, they saw a small, very small figure standing in the field under the moonlight, its eyes shining towards the house, but when they ran out, it disappeared as if it had never existed. And then the nightmares began. They dreamed that they were being pulled into the ground, grabbed by small but strong hands, buried alive in the darkness. One of them, a healthy man of about 40, even disappeared a few days later. His shoes were found lying alone beside the field, but there were no footprints, no sign of him, as if he had been swallowed up by the earth. The authorities said he had gone drunk, but the villagers did not believe it. They believed it was the curse of the dark dwarf. And since then, no one dared to walk through the field at night. So what does science say about these phenomena? We live in an age of reason, of modern laboratories, of scientists with microscopes and X-ray scanners. Some researchers believe that stories about dwarfs may have originated in ancient tribes, small groups of people who lived in caves or deep forests, forgotten by time, erased from our memory by history. For example, on the Indonesian island of Flores, archaeologists have discovered the remains of an ancient human species called Homo floresiensis, a species only about 1 meter tall, with short legs and a small body known as the hobbit. They lived tens of thousands of years ago, but who can be sure that they are all extinct? Did the stories of the dwarfs originate from ancient memories of such tribes, memories passed down through word of mouth for thousands of years, exaggerated into the horror legends we hear today? Or is there something else, something that science has yet to touch? Some people do not believe in scientific explanations. They believe that dwarves are not living creatures, neither humans nor animals, but spirits, entities trapped between two worlds, the world of the living and the world of the dead. They say that the underground, with its deep caves, its bottomless crevices, has long been the abode of lost souls, souls that cannot go to heaven, cannot go to hell, and dwarves are their embodiment. They lurk in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to interact with humans, sometimes to help, but more often to take revenge, to punish those who dare to invade their territory. What do you think? Do you believe in science, with its fossilized skeletons and cold hypotheses? Or do you believe in spiritual stories, whispers about underground spirits? Whichever side you choose, these stories make us wonder, make us think. Is there really something hiding beneath our feet, in unexplored caves, in the old basements of our homes, in the cracks we never pay attention to? Imagine this for a moment. You are sitting in your living room, the clock strikes midnight, everything is so quiet, you can hear yourself breathing, and then from somewhere, a knock sounds very light, very soft, as if someone is using a small hammer to hit the floor, but the sound is not coming from above, but from below, from deep within the earth. What will you do? Will you ignore it, thinking it is just a mouse running in the wall? Or will you stand up, put your ear to the floor, and listen to see if something is calling you from down there. The answer perhaps will be revealed in our final part. We have come a long way, a journey that spans thousands of years through distant lands, through stories that just by hearing them, you feel a chill run down your spine. From the ancient myths of Northern Europe, where dwarves were talented blacksmiths with magical hands, to the dark legends of Ireland, South America, Eastern Europe, where they became terrifying entities, soul thieves, lords of darkness. And then we enter modern times where those little figures still appear, still be seen, still make people tremble despite our science, our technology, all the things that we believe will protect us from ancient fears. But where do all these stories lead us? What do they mean? Are dwarves just characters in the human imagination, images painted to explain things we do not understand? Or are they something more, a symbol of the deepest fear in each of us, the fear of the dark, the fear of what lies beneath, the fear of places where the light never reaches? Before we finish, before I let you return to your daily lives, let me tell you one last legend, a story that I have kept until the end because it is not only scary, not only creepy, but also a warning, a reminder that what we have heard today is not just a story of the past, but can be part of the present, of the future. This story comes from the European Alps, a place where the towering mountains are covered with white snow, where the deep valleys hide secrets that no one dares to dig deep to find out. The people here, who live in small villages perched on the mountainside, believe that thousands of years ago, the dwarves lived peacefully with humans. They were not ferocious, not cursed entities, but creatures of the earth, miners of gold and precious stones, artisans with small but talented hands. They lived in caves deep under the mountain, where the sound of hammers hitting rocks echoed incessantly, where the glittering gold piled up like small hills. It is said that in those days dwarves and humans had a covenant, an agreement made in silence, without words, without writing, but respected by both sides. Dwarves would bring gifts from the earth to the surface, shining gold bars, gems that sparkled like stars, in exchange for food, water, or simply the silence of the human silence, so that they could continue their work undisturbed. For centuries, the covenant was kept. The villagers received the gifts, they lived richly, they built spacious houses, they raised large herds of cattle, and they never asked where the gifts came from, never dared to dig deep into the mountains to find more. But humans, as we all know, are greedy creatures, creatures who are never satisfied with what they have. And then, one fateful day, that greed broke it all. A small village at the foot of the tallest mountain in the land decided that they wanted more than the gold the dwarves brought them, more than the jewels they received every full moon. They gathered, the strong men with picks and shovels, the women watching with worried eyes, and they began to dig deep into the mountain, deep into the dwarves' territory. They dug day after day, the picks clanging and the rocks shattering under the metal blades. And finally, they found a vein of gold, a vein larger than any they had ever seen, shining like the sun buried in the earth. They cheered, they danced, they carried the gold back to the village, thinking they had defeated the dwarves, thinking they had taken what they deserved. But they were wrong, terribly wrong, a mistake that would cost them their lives. That night, as the moon hung high in the sky, as the village slept after a day of celebration, a sound rang out from the mountain, a sound not of wind, not of wild animals, but of hammering on rock. But this time, it was not steady, not slow as usual. It was faster, stronger, angrier, as if hundreds, thousands of little hands were pounding the ground at the same time. And then the whole land began to shake. The villagers woke up, panicked, ran out of their houses, but it was too late. From the mountain, a red light burst forth as if fire was coming from deep within the earth, and then a loud explosion. It was said that the dwarf had summoned fire from the ground, awakened a volcano that had been dormant for thousands of years, and in that moment the whole village was buried. Ash and lava poured down, swallowing everything, wooden houses, herds of cattle, people screaming in despair. When daylight returned, what had once been a village was nothing but a pile of ash, a dead land where not a blade of grass could grow. Since then, no one has dared to set foot in that area. Passers-by, nomads wandering the mountains, say they still hear strange sounds coming from underground, hammers striking metal, cold chuckles, and sometimes angry whispers as if the dwarves are still there, still guarding their treasure, still waiting for the next greedy person to punish. Was this their final curse? A warning that if humans continue to encroach, continue to dig into the ground without thinking, they will return, bringing darkness and destruction with them? No one knows for sure, but the story is still told, still whispered around the fire, as a reminder that there are things not to be touched, places not to be set foot in. So we have come to the end of our journey, a long journey through the terrifying stories, the dark legends of the dwarves. They are not just characters in fairy tales, not just figures in our imagination. They are a reminder of mysteries we never really understand, of powers we cannot control, of what awaits in the darkness. The next time you're walking through a dark forest, when you are standing near an old, abandoned mine, when you hear a strange tapping sound coming from under the floorboards in the dead of night, stop for a moment, listen carefully, and ask yourself, could that be one of them? Could they be there, right under your feet, in the darkness where you cannot see them? I hope you enjoyed this video, felt the chill, the fear that I wanted to bring. If you did, please like, subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell me any scary stories about dwarfs that you have heard, known. Now, be careful when walking in the dark, because you never know what's waiting there. Never know if there are little eyes watching you from underground. Thank you, and see you again.